Six Dogs, the name you most likely have heard if you're into underground rap at all, although not as popular as someone like Lil Peep or XXXTentacion, but this story is a very common one, and unfortunately a very tragic one as well, of an artist who came from a very strict household, found a love for rap music, eventually started to make his own, before then getting picked up into the LA underground scene, before eventually being spit out and left to fade away. We always get to see the best sides of SoundCloud rap, of artists coming out of their bedroom, making their way into the mainstream industry, getting plaques, money, chains, cars, and everything surrounding it. And even though we have seen many stories of artists falling off over time, it's not often that they talk about the artists who make their way into the industry, get a very short time there, and then get spit out feeling like they were used. But today I want to talk about that very thing when we look into the story of Six Dogs. Ronald Chase Amick was born May 5th, 1999 in Georgia, into a very religious Christian household. Growing up as an only child meant his parents were very overprotective of him, even homeschooling him in his early years. And of course, being very religious, they would often take him to church multiple times a week, which meant he didn't have a whole lot of free time to really do what he wanted to do. However, that's not to say that he was completely isolated from all other kids, because his cousin was around a lot of the time, with the two often playing video games, building Lego together, and riding bikes, which led to a scary moment in Six Dogs' life where he was actually attacked by a pack of six dogs. He did say at one point this could be the origin of his rap name, but he doesn't remember specifically if it was 5 dogs or 4 dogs, maybe it was 6, but either way it definitely stuck with him, and after that point he realized that the outside world could be scary. During his younger years, a lot of Christian music was played in the house, however he would eventually watch the video for Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, and after that he started to fall in love with rap, eventually listening to Lil Wayne and Drake as well, which definitely aren't the most violent rap acts of all time. They're pretty mundane, but considering that he grew up in such a strict household, seeing rappers like this for the first time definitely gave him a different perspective on life, and after that he wanted to be one himself, which when you think about it is probably the nightmare of any Christian mother, because they think hip-hop is so dangerous and thuggish and that a lot comes from it, but it seems like his parents were pretty okay with this. As the years went on, he would eventually get into a private Christian school where he began struggling with his beliefs, thinking about how a lot of it didn't make sense to him, while also being deathly afraid to go to hell if he stepped out of line. He eventually ended up giving up on the faith altogether, but he didn't become an atheist either, landing somewhere more in the middle, thinking about how there could be a God, but if there was, he didn't want to let that control him from not doing the things that he wanted to do, taking on a more live and let live attitude before falling into full-on apathy later on in life. During his time in private school, he would manage to meet a couple more friends, and they would often freestyle together, being the second reason why he picked the name Six Dogs, saying that it was a very easy name to rhyme with almost everything else, so at the time when he was doing that more spiritual miracle rap in his early years, that was a perfect name to pick. After spending a couple more years in private school, he'd finally switch over into public, with one of his friends coming along with him, but unfortunately before long, he realized that this friend was incredibly racist and decided to cut him off once and for all, which only served to isolate him even further, and eventually he started to feel like he didn't care about school anymore and kind of felt apathetic to everything that was going on, not too dissimilar to Lil Peep. Although unlike Lil Peep, who decided to start changing his style up in high school and trying to get people to notice him, Six Dogs was a lot more low-key and shy and didn't want anybody to notice him whatsoever, which is most likely why Six Dogs would start to look up to Lil Peep once he discovered his music, because they were both in a very similar situation. They both had kind of the same outlook on life, but they both took it in very separate directions. Basically, Lil Peep was everything that Six Dogs wanted to be on the outside, but at the time he was still too insecure, only writing down raps and not recording any music, not to mention he couldn't record music at his parents' house because they wouldn't let him do that. But all of that changed one summer when he was working as a lifeguard, and he realized that he found it so boring to sit on the chair 8 hours a day that the thought of working a 9 to 5 every day for the rest of his life was truly a haunting thought, so he decided it was better that he tried to do something now or he never would. So he decided it was time to give music a shot, and luckily for him, he actually had a friend named Shrimp who had his own home studio built in his garage, so he would start going over there behind his parents' back and recording music. Like I said before, at this point he was taking heavy inspiration from Lil Peep and his wave, trying to capture that same sound while putting his own spin on it, and around the same time he would also get his wisdom teeth pulled out and was given Oxycontin. And of course, when a doctor gives you that strong a pain medication for a simple thing like getting your wisdom teeth out, it's not long before you get addicted, which is exactly what happened to Six Dogs, which was definitely not a good thing, but at the same time it did give his music a more drugged out wavy sound, which a lot of people really seemed to vibe with, and he ended up dropping his first ever song called Demon from the A not long after that. The song ended up doing okay, it probably got about 1,000 to 2,000 plays on SoundCloud, which wasn't bad for his first song, but his second song called Flossing immediately became a big hit. He said at the time that he was buying a lot of reposts from artists like Little Tracy, Coldheart, and other people in Goth Boy Clique, so that that definitely helped it get to the right audience, and after the numbers started to go up on SoundCloud, it got noticed by Damon Astari, who wanted to post a video for the song on his channel, and at first Six Dogs didn't really think this was serious, but after noticing that Astari was definitely picking up motion and had a lot of people that he liked on it, he decided to go for it. Now this music video was incredibly simple. It was basically Six Dogs dancing around in a room with a projector on the wall playing anime, but at the time SoundCloud was really about authenticity, so people really enjoyed the fact that it looked so low budget, and it ended up doing numbers on the channel as well. And just like that, after only dropping 2 songs, Six Dogs was already one of the upcoming rappers in the SoundCloud scene, and labels were starting to take notice. After that, he would drop a self-titled mixtape that was a sort of compilation, including songs that he had already dropped on SoundCloud, including a couple new ones, and one of the tracks on that mixtape was called Fako Dreams, which ended up becoming an even bigger hit than Flossing on SoundCloud, before then getting posted on Elevator, where it became even more popular. So after creating 2 incredibly popular songs in only a couple of months, he decided that it was time to shoot a music video for Fako Dreams as well, but unfortunately he got a little bit too drunk when he was trying to record the video and ended up getting arrested by cops, which of course made his parents very upset. Even though he didn't have any jail time or really got in that much trouble, they thought that he was going down the wrong path, and then immediately after that discovered that he had been making music and posting it online where he was talking about drug use, so they decided that he couldn't make music anymore. This probably would have been the end of Six Dogs' musical career until he moved out of his parents' house, but luckily for him, his 2 tracks kept running up numbers and eventually would get noticed by Mascarilla. Now this was long before they were doing recorded interviews on a YouTube channel. They were only a website at the time, but either way the guy who ran that wanted to reach out to Six Dogs and talk about his come up, but of course his mom wouldn't be okay with that, so once again he had to go behind her back. He tried his best to put the interview out without her knowing about it, but she did eventually catch wind of that and would immediately reach out to Mascarilla to tell them not to release it. But after the guy who ran Mascarilla named Roger ended up talking to his mother and explaining that it wasn't going to be a bad article that was going to make him seem like a terrible guy, she understood and asked him only to cut out the parts about him getting arrested, and then it got released. Now at this point I know a lot of people are going to say that his mom was way too strict, but keep in mind that she probably grew up Christian herself and she doesn't know anything about the online world, SoundCloud rap, or anything else that goes along with it, and probably only saw it as something that was very dangerous for her son to get into. I mean, if you try to look at it from her perspective, all you would see is a bunch of people with face tattoos doing a bunch of drugs and going out of control flexing guns, so it definitely doesn't seem like something you would want your kid to get into if you want them to have a bright future, but she would eventually understand and became very supportive. Now when you read this interview, you start to get a little bit of a cocky tone coming from Six Dogs, which definitely makes sense because keep in mind he was 17 years old at the time, and it's not often that you blow up so fast, not to mention it was his second song ever that got him famous, and then he immediately had another one that was even bigger. So all of that fame was coming at him really fast, and not to mention almost everybody in his high school would start to ask to take pictures with him, so he got a pretty inflated ego pretty fast. And at one point he would say that if he couldn't be a rapper, he wasn't going to be anything at all. If you don't understand what I'm saying, I can't really say it on YouTube, but basically if he couldn't live out his dream, then he wasn't going to live. You get me? But luckily for him, he wouldn't have to make that choice because everything was going well, with him graduating high school in late 2017 before them flying over to LA in 2018 to see what labels would want to sign him. He ended up deciding on Interscope Records, who would immediately put him in a room with Benny Blanco and Diplo, trying to blow him up even further. He also got the chance to meet Lil Peep, who would dance to Faygo Dreams before the two of them ended up FaceTiming a couple times and having a couple conversations. And this goes to show just how fast Six Dogs became popular, because he went from making music in a garage with his friend and listening to Lil Peep to actually FaceTiming and talking to him within about 4 months' time. That's definitely the fastest come up I've ever heard of, because even Lil Pump took a couple years before he got popular, but Six Dogs only had to do it for a couple months, put out 2 songs, and was suddenly signed to a major label. It's gotta be crazy and a lot for him to take on at once. As soon as 2018 got off to a start, he would immediately head over to No Jumper to do an exposed video on the channel, and sure, it wasn't a full-on interview, but it basically had the same effect, and then after that, he would drop another song on Elevator called Butt Cheeks. And 1 month after that, that very same track would then get a video on Lyrical Lemonade that he actually co-directed alongside Cole Bennett, because he wanted to have complete control over his vision, which is definitely very cool, but at the same time, that started to create a couple problems between him and the label, because after all, the music label is only going to do what makes money and not let you have complete creative control over what you're doing. But for now, things are still pretty good. He ended up doing a couple shows in the local area before then doing one with him on Everything, and then doing an interview with them as well. Now this interview has a very different tone than the first one that he did on Mascarilla. You can tell that he's starting to fit into his fame a lot better now, and he's not as cocky. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's definitely proud of everything he accomplished in such a short time, and he definitely should be, but at the same time you can definitely tell that he's a little gone. He doesn't doesn't seem to be fully there and probably under the influence of something, so it seems like that drug addiction was carrying through a lot of his career. In March of 2018, he would drop a small EP called Rough Cuts from David's Basement, which pretty well can be considered a gift to his fans and not really a true project that the label had a whole lot of control over. After that, he ended up performing alongside young bands and dropping another project called Six Wolves with Danny Wolf, also featuring young bands. At this point, it seems like the label was finally willing to put a little bit of effort into him, getting him a collaboration with an at the time pretty big SoundCloud rapper named Little Skies. The track was called Off the Gas, and it was a pretty big hit, but definitely not as big as Butt Cheeks, and it never got a music video either. After that, you wouldn't see any more music from him for a couple months, and it seems like he was having so many creative control issues with the label that he decided to full on step away from them in 2019. We ended up getting one more music video in July 2018 called Lonely Kobe that was posted on a channel called Noisy Rap, but after that, it seems like Six Dogs fully stepped away from fame, and that was around the same time that him and his girlfriend of a couple years ended up breaking up. So with nothing left for him in LA, he decided to move back in with his mom and dad, and after that, he became very depressed. It seemed like things weren't really going the way that he expected. It seems like he got his way into the industry and was immediately spit out, and even though he got a lot of great opportunities during the time that he was in LA, his wave had definitely started to burn out. He didn't drop that much music during the time that he was famous, and it was getting harder and harder for him to make a comeback. He would drop a project in 2019 called Hi-Hats and Heartbreak, which was definitely one of his best projects, seeing as how it was so close to home. There were so much heartfelt messages in there, and he was really talking about all the struggles that he was going through and everything that he was feeling at the time. And if that wasn't enough to tell you that he was in a bad place at the time, he would also do another interview with Mascarilla where you can tell that he's become very numb to life. He seems like his mind is in a different place, and all the questions that Roger's asking him seem to be very uncomfortable for him because he feels like he made it big and then he squandered his chance, and now he's basically back home with his parents and nothing has gone the way that it should have. And that's not to say that he was on drugs anymore, because I actually think he was clean at this point. He was drinking smoothies and a lot of water. It doesn't seem like he's out of it in a drugged out way. It seems like he's out of it in the type of way that he's just completely emotionally exhausted and he doesn't want to be here anymore, which unfortunately was the case. And even worse, all those friends that he supposedly had in LA were no longer checking in with him now that they couldn't make any money off of him. And this all led up to the fateful day that he would climb on top of a building and unfortunately jump off. Now, there's a lot of speculation around his death, and I don't really want to talk too much about it because it seems kind of disrespectful, but either way, he would leave the world in January of 2021. In the following days, the news would hit the internet and everybody would start to talk about how much they cared about him and how much his music actually meant, although I do feel like some people were taking advantage of the fact that he passed away to try to get more clicks on videos. You didn't hear a whole lot about him before the time that he passed away, and while I do feel that some people were genuine, it's definitely kind of crappy that he got left behind and had to move home with nobody checking in on him. But as soon as he passed away, everybody was talking about how much they loved him. But you know what they say, everybody cares about you after you pass, so unfortunately that's always going to be the way that things go. He would have one posthumous release called Ronald, which had all the songs that were unreleased before that point. There wasn't really a whole lot left over because after making that last project, he didn't record a lot because he was feeling so depressed. There was a couple more music videos and lyric videos that came out after that, but at this point it seems like his legacy was fully solidified and we wouldn't get a whole lot more music to come from him in the following years. But surprisingly, he actually would get a feature on the 2024 Lyrical Lemonade album, which was kind of surprising considering just how corporate Lyrical Lemonade is nowadays, so it was definitely nice for him to pay respects to somebody that he made a music video with in the past. But at the same time, it's kind of sad to see because I feel like if he was still here, he could have actually been on that Lyrical Lemonade album alive instead of having to have a posthumous feature on it, but either way, this is the life we're living in, so unfortunately that's not possible. And with all that said, that's basically the story of Six Dogs, a very sad tale that happens way too often in the rap game, and it shows the other side of what happens when you get famous too quick and too early on in life, and honestly, there's not a whole lot more to say about it. These types of stories often hit so close to home because it basically could be anybody that you know, any person who got this level of fame and money at such a young age and got way too surrounded by the wrong people could end up in the same early grave. But luckily, we at least know the name of Six Dogs, he has a legacy behind him, and his music will live on forever. So to end it off, I want to say rest in peace to Six Dogs, as well as Hella Sketchy, another SoundCloud rapper that passed away way too young, and of course, Little Peep as well. I hope wherever they are nowadays, they're in a better place, and besides that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm not going to say shout out to Knife Gang this time, instead put dog emojis to pay respects to him. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and check out my second channel. I'm trying to get it back on track and do more interviews over there, so if you're interested in that, then definitely let me know. But with all that said, Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.